How can you configure the correct Cloud Sandbox policies? Here is an example of Cloud Sandbox policy, where we have shown 4 different policies on how you can configure this. The first policy here, the purpose of that policy or the goal of that policy is to create business exceptions. For specific users, groups, or departments, you can select the type of files. For instance, these could be PDF files or Microsoft Office documents. You can define a custom URL category for these websites. For these specific groups, you want to do allow and scan. Yes, you are scanning, but since these websites, links, and files are very productivity sensitive, we are also giving the files to the end user right away. If we do find out that one of these files, which was downloaded by the user, turns out to be malicious, the subsequent times they download the file, it will be blocked. That is what is defined as subsequent action. The second rule that you see here is to quarantine exe files from suspicious destinations. This is applied to everyone. Any file type, which is an exe or a Windows library file like a DLL or APK file, for any websites that are uncategorized or have a miscellaneous URL category or one of the sensitive URL categories, I would even add newly observed domains here. For all those types of file types, we will be quarantining. The first action when we say quarantine means that we hold the file, we send it through a full sandbox analysis, and we let the user download the file only when we make sure that this is benign and not malicious. This does come at the cost of somewhat of our user experience, which is why we are limiting this only to exe files or DLL files being downloaded from suspicious websites. The next rule is to permit exe for administrators. This is the IT help desk group, because these are the folks who are constantly patching and updating systems and domain controllers and installing new Windows updates. For those specific individuals, we do want to allow and scan. Yes, we want to scan all these files, but at the same time, we do want them to download these right away to make sure that productivity does not suffer. The last rule you have at the very end is to scan everything else. This applies to everyone, to all users, and this is where we can enable AI quarantine. What happens here now is that anytime a file is considered benign, based on the AI ML model, depending on what kind of website it is being downloaded from or what type of file it is, we give the file right away to the user. We will still scan it, but in cases where we believe that the chances of the file being benign are very low, we hold the file, run it through a full sandbox analysis, and then give the file to the end user. Pay attention to the note here. You can always configure alerting for patient zero events if any policies are set with allow and scan or quarantine plus AI as the first action. As a cloud-delivered product, there is no hardware to buy and configure, and there is no software to manage, reducing complexity and resources. Without needing to be on location to set up and connect each device, you can be up and running with Zscaler Cloud Sandbox with a simple 2-step configuration, criteria, and action. As a bonus, policies are easy to manage, configure, and deploy. Within a few clicks, admins can implement policies, including rule order for precise execution, and other policies that follow users or user groups regardless of location. For more granular controls, the CloudGen Sandbox can enhance static and dynamic file analyses with automated JA3 fingerprinting detection and configure custom hash block lists and Yara rules. Additionally, score-based blocking policies can take action on annoying or suspicious grayware and adware files that don't typically pass the threat score threshold. The image here displays a full coverage policy. You scan everything. For instance, you have all file types selected here. It's a very granular rule set. You can select file types, different types of URL categories, sandbox categories, and users. As you can see within action, we have first-time action as quarantine, with AI Instant Verdict Quarantine enabled, and then a block for subsequent downloads. Another way to look at sandbox policies or cloud sandbox policies is to look at them from the lens of risk tolerance. You can base your policy with organizational risk tolerance in mind. You can consider risky locations, departments, and users appropriately, but also risky destinations. You can make exceptions as granular as possible to maintain the maximum security posture. There are 2 ways to go about it. If you are running a business that is very risk-averse, there are lots at stake, so your risk tolerance is very low. This is where you can define a broader policy with more URL categories and more file types where you want to enable AI quarantine. This includes industries like investment banks, law firms, and government agencies. However, there could be another industry where your risk tolerance is high. This includes industries like IT, academic research and engineering, and recruiting. There you probably have a rule that looks at fewer URL categories, and fewer file types. But you can still strike the right balance between the two, as on the rule. Once the behavior is analyzed, and the action is taken, we also provide complete visibility into malware behavior. For instance, this is a Sandbox detailed report for one of the samples where you can see what the classification is, and there's a threat score. We also have a process summary on how this file opened and what different processes it opened in return, what kind of activity we saw in networking, how does it map to the MITRE attack framework, what different tactics, system summary, and download summary. A lot of information is provided as part of this complete visibility into malware behavior. The networking piece is the callback behavior, or the command and control. So, whatever we have learned here using the cloud effect, we also actually update our advanced type of protection capabilities using this. All of this is also used to do a lot of correlations by our Threat Labs research teams. A lot of this is also used by our AI/ML teams to further refine the AI/ML models that we have running within Cloud Sandbox and other products. To summarize, the Zscaler Cloud Sandbox allows us to deliver true inline proxy architecture capability to inspect files inline to stop patient zero infections, prevent emerging threats, provide real-time intelligent protections, and we do it across more than 250 billion daily transactions. All these capabilities around static analysis, dynamic analysis, AI-driven quarantine, and cloud effect work across the board on all these different files.